All right. Welcome to the Messy Middle Road Trip podcast. As we approach Valentine's Day, Sandra and I wanted to sit down and have a conversation about why we think self-love, especially in midlife, is the most important kind of love we can give. We know you'll love it, so let's grab the snacks, call shotgun, and hit the road for another episode.
I'm Sandra.
And I'm Nicole, and we're entrepreneurs,
Wives,
a mom,
a favorite auntie,
creative souls.
and women who are fearlessly navigating the middle of life.
We created a community of women over 40 who embrace the past, appreciate where we are now, and take action to live our best life because it's all about the journey. Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Nicole. Oh my gosh. You know what is so crazy? People don't know this, that the whole time we have been doing this podcast, we have never done it in person because we have not been able to. Isn't
Correct.
that nutty?
It is nutty. The only in person we did, and it was still kind of socially distant, except when we took the photographs, was when we did our photo shoot together in the convertible.
I know. I know. And I have to say, like, what a joy that was being close to another person.
Right? Even though we still had distance in between us.
I know. So I don't know. So I feel like this is kind of a perfect time for us to like be talking about this idea of love and talking about self-love because I think people are really craving that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And as I shared with you before we started this, I'm really seeing a lot of articles, I'm seeing a lot of quotes, a lot of posts from friends where it seems like we're not the only ones thinking about this. It just seems very timely, especially as we're approaching Valentine's Day, and that is the love holiday.
Mhm.
Although my husband is funny because he's very anti-Valentine's in that, they jack the prices of flowers and it's like a forced uh, action, where you
Uh-huh.
have to
Uh-huh.
tell people that you love them. Whereas he prefers to just send flowers on a Tuesday just because.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a holiday. So I agree with him as far as that it has turned a little bit commercial, but I think it's really important to stop and realize it's very hard to give and receive love to others if we're not doing it to ourselves because we set the precedent, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
With
for sure.
how we treat ourselves and
Well, it always makes me think of being on an airplane, right?
Mhm.
They say that should anything happen, be sure to put oxygen on yourself first so that you're able to take care of whomever is with you, especially if it's a child, right? So I kind of think it's the same thing with self love. If you're really caring for yourself, if you're doing all the things, setting boundaries, making time for you and your family or your loved ones, when you do all of that to preserve you, then you're able to really care for the other people in your life.
It's so true. It's so true. And I don't know about you, but there have been pockets of time, especially during COVID, where I'm sure part of it was the isolation and you just get into a funk. I know I am in the midst of dealing with perimenopause issues,
Mm,
and sometimes that can put you into a spiral of a pity party where you're thinking, why am I going through this? You start to really beat up on yourself, and you
yeah.
have those negative thoughts and that negative self-talk, or if you're just not performing at the level where you want to be, the first thing we do is criticize ourselves and give ourselves a hard time instead of giving ourselves that grace to just take a breath and say, you know what, maybe today is just a day that I'm having, and
Yeah.
then tomorrow will be better. And
Yeah.
I think it's so important to really edit those negative thoughts when they come in,
Hmm.
because that can just really create a bad habit of constantly criticizing, right? And
Yeah.
I love Brene Brown because she always talks about, that the thought process of um, really just creating that positivity and that self-talk. How would you want to treat others, right? That's how we should treat ourselves. And
Yeah.
we often, we miss that beat, and we abuse ourselves with how we talk, when we're
Well,
looking at ourselves in the mirror.
I sometimes ask myself, okay, so if you are your own best friend
Mm-hmm.
and you were talking to your best friend right now about whatever it is that's going on, would you ever use that language to
Mm-hmm.
talk to her? And usually the answer is no.
Yeah, exactly. But we do it to
And
ourselves all the time.
yeah, and so I do try to remind myself that the words that I use for myself have an impact, whether it be positive or negative. And I actually, just last week, I decided to give a name to that inner critic because that inner critic shows up when I'm getting ready to do something new, or I'm feeling bad about myself, or like whatever it is. And that inner critic, who I name Stella, can be really screechy.
Mm.
And I'm trying to um, develop a relationship with Stella so that I can appreciate when she's trying to keep me safe,
Mm-hmm.
and also know that sometimes she's going to tell me things that are not true.
Mm-hmm.
um, so how do how does one figure out when to listen to those voices because they're trying to be helpful, and when to just say, hey, you know what? I understand you have something to say, but I'm doing this anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you do? I mean, how do you deal with that inner critic?
Well, it's interesting because I will tell you that with COVID, uh, and I've shared this, that my autoimmune condition is totally flared. I'm like off the rails right now, and it's
Mm,
the winter time doesn't help.
yeah.
The psoriasis, just with the dry winter air, it's awful. And from the perspective of me looking in the mirror and looking at my body and seeing my psoriasis flared and just feeling uncomfortable, feeling itchy and raw, and it's affecting my sleep. It's
Mm,
affecting how I move.
yeah.
And growing up as a dancer, I've always just been fluid with my movements. But when you try to go move and do something, and you're experiencing pain and that uncomfortable tightness of your skin
Yeah.
with the illness, it's very easy to fall into that pit of self-despair and
Mm,
criticize my body
mm,
and look at it. And I started thinking to myself, man, we're only a few months away from summer. Am I going to want to show up in a bathing suit? Like, how can I put this body on display with a tank top and shorts? And I'm going to be embarrassed, and people are going to stare, and I'm going to be uncomfortable. And what are my kids going to think? And I just started kind of snowballing with
mhm,
those thoughts.
mhm.
And I had to stop, especially because I just celebrated my 50th last week.
Woohoo!
Woo! But it really gave me pause because I had to do that pattern interrupt. And I had to remind myself, your body is amazing.
Yeah.
Your body has carried you for decades up to this point and has done a lot of hard things. It's done some beautifully creative things. It's given birth to two amazing daughters. It has been stronger than I gave myself credit for.
Mm, mhm.
And it has shown that it is resilient
Yeah.
and that it can heal itself given the opportunity. So I had to do that pattern interrupt and say, Nicole, knock it off. Like,
Uh-huh.
enough with the negative self-talk. And I think that that's really important because, especially now, when we are all, especially those of us who are living in the areas of the country that are uh, in the throes of winter,
Yeah.
we are dealing with SAD, seasonal affective disorder, right? That's one one of the issues. We're dealing with COVID still. And that can really get you in a funk, especially this time of year. The daylight hours are shorter, so it can affect us psychologically, to put us in that negative mind space. So I think really trying to do that pattern interrupt with our thoughts when we hear ourselves saying negative things, pausing and saying, okay, I need to flip the script on that.
Yeah.
But then also getting into it, it's interesting because I've always tried to set time to do meditation, and I have often found myself having roadblocks with that, making the excuse of I don't have time.
Yeah.
I can't fit this in, even if it's just a quick 5-minute meditation. So what I've actually been doing instead, so that I don't have the excuse, is when I crawl into bed at night, while I'm lying in bed, I start doing a mini meditation to get myself settling in.
Yeah,
and
that's
just
nice.
counting what I'm grateful for, thinking positive thoughts about visualizing myself as healthy and vibrant, and stepping into who I want to be and how I want to show up, and then allowing myself to drift off to sleep.
That's a nice way to close the day. And then also, hopefully, it brings you into a really fresh place in the morning.
Yeah, and I felt like I think I was putting too much pressure on myself to sit down and meditate, to journal, to do yoga, to blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah.
yeah.
Because like you had said earlier when we were talking about expectations, sometimes we set these really high expectations for ourselves.
Yeah,
And when we've got all this stuff going on,
yeah,
if we falter with one of those, again, it's that, oh,
yeah,
I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. I can't hold it all together
yeah,
because we didn't do the things on our to-do list.
yeah,
So
yeah.
sometimes we're hard on ourselves with that. And I found I just needed to shift my perspective on it and say, you know what? That's okay. I'll just do it before bed.
Hmm.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm laying there on my pillow. I might as
Well,
well
it's
take a moment.
interesting. Like when I was starting to put a morning routine into practice,
Mhm.
I realized that if there were too many things on my list or things I really didn't want to do, they would never get done.
Sure.
And so I think we have to be realistic, and not just realistic, but I think we have to kind of play with it a little bit.
Mhm.
If something drops off, then maybe it was meant to. And maybe we're meant to do our meditation at night. Like it can hopefully organically sort of work its way out so that we're doing the things that do make us feel good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
There's no right or wrong, right?
yeah, so that's exactly it. There is no right or wrong. It's just whatever works for you. Um, as you were talking about your body and looking at yourself and thinking about the summer coming and all of that, I was reminded of this practice that a friend of mine told me about a couple weeks ago. And it's called mirror work, as in a mirror, looking into a mirror. And I had never heard of it before, but it was something that was created by Louise Hay, who is the creator of Hay House. There's lots of books and practices and programs that come out of Hay House that are very spiritual. And so she started doing this practice called mirror work. And it's as simple as it sounds. You basically look at yourself in the mirror every day. You can do it more than once a day. And you take a few minutes where you really look at yourself. You look into your eyes and you tell yourself positive things. And the purpose of mirror work is to really fall in love with yourself. And I know that that sounds a little silly. Maybe it sounds a little woo woo for people, but it's very easy for many of us, particularly women, because of the messages that we hear around us, to look at ourselves in the mirror and feel like we are not enough.
Mhm.
We're not worthy. We're not pretty enough. We're not skinny enough. We're not whatever the crap is that comes up, right?
Yeah.
But What Louise has suggested is that every day, at least once a day, look yourself in the mirror, in your eyes, and tell yourself loving things like, hey, kid, you're looking great today. Or, um, I think you have such a kind face. But all of it is working toward this place of love and appreciation for yourself.
Mhm.
And I think that has to do with not just looking at yourself in the face, but looking at the whole body.
Sure.
Um, so it's funny. I had not heard about this kind of work, but I have for the last, I don't know how many years. Every so often I'll be in the bathroom and I'll just say, looking good, girl. And Brett will say to me,
Do you catch Brett's attention? She's
yeah,
like, are you talking to
yeah,
yourself
she's
again?
like, who are you talking to? I'm like, I'm talking to myself. I'm telling myself I'm going to have a really good day and I'm looking really cute. And I know it sounds silly, but like you said at the beginning of this podcast, if you're not taking care of you, then it's really hard to take care of the other people in your life.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
agree with you 100%. And I love the concept of that mirror practice. And I don't know if you remember, it was a few years ago now, there was a video that went viral. It was a
I
dad with
think I
his
know what it
daughter,
is. I think
and
I
I
know it.
think she was probably 4 in the video.
Yeah.
She was standing on the counter in the bathroom, and her dad was behind her,
Oh my
and
gosh.
he would say something, and he would ask her to repeat it. And it was mantras, I am brave, and she'd go, I am brave, and then he'd say, I am beautiful, and she would repeat, I am beautiful, and she'd look at herself right in the eye. And they went through, it was probably a good 3 to 4 minutes where they just went back and forth. And what kind of day are you going to have today? She said, I'm going to have a great day. And it
Yeah.
was just, the video went viral for good reason, because when you think about it, we are not taught that from a young age. We might hear it from parents if we are lucky enough to have been raised with encouraging parents who tell us, you're talented, you're beautiful, you're smart, you're funny.
Mm.
And I try to remember to do that, to take a pause and tell my girls that. I have to pattern interrupt them sometimes because I hear the teenage self-critical voice coming out of their mouths,
Yeah.
or I'll hear it with their friends where they're talking about themselves. And I have to say, girls,
Yeah.
enough. I
Yeah.
don't want to hear that. You're all beautiful.
Yeah.
Nobody has issues. You look great in your jeans. Stop.
Yeah.
But really, what an empowering moment to be able to teach that, especially a father to their daughter, to be able to plant that seed that will hopefully continue with that little girl. I
Yeah.
would love to catch up with her 10,
Well,
15 years down the road and see if she continues that mantra that she and her dad had set from the time when she was a little girl.
and I think you're right about the planting of the seed. I think for this young girl, the planting of the seed of this positive talk, but that is also the other part of mirror work is that you are planting these seeds. So, like, as I was thinking about our talk this morning, I started to look up some more information about mirror work, and there's a whole PDF on how to begin mirror work for yourself. It's like a 21-day program, or it's not a program, but it guides you through how to really make it into a habit. And
Mm.
it is planting these seeds of love for yourself so that you're really caring for you, falling in love with you, and then, like we've been saying, projecting that outward.
Yes, 100%. Because if you are so turned inward to the negative and obsessed about all your flaws and all your imperfections,
Yeah.
how can then you turn towards the sun and be the light for somebody else? Right? Because you're just, it just implodes on you.
So here's the other thing I was thinking about. so often we are doing Zoom calls, right? And what that means is that we are looking at ourselves, for some people, all day long. Like,
Sure.
we see ourselves all day long. And what I thought was, as a practice for folks to try over the next like week, every time you have a Zoom call, before you connect with other people and you see yourself, look at yourself and say, "You look great today. I
Mhm.
love your smile. I love you." Whatever it is, whatever affirmation you want to use, every time you begin your Zoom call, say that to yourself. And I imagine within a week, it's going to be much easier to see yourself. And it's also going to be so much easier to, um, share an affirmation with yourself. And maybe you'll even start to share an affirmation with the other people on your call.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I find I love starting my day with I try not to jump on my social media or my phone first thing in the morning. I give myself a breath before I do that.
Yeah,
But I love going on and finding positive quotes in the morning to post, something that speaks to me, and then I try to share why that resonates. And it sets the intention for me for the day.
totally.
And I think it really allows me to show up in a positive manner. And I think it's so important to really to really hone that focus and allow that positivity in. Like when you look for it, it's so much easier to connect to it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When you're looking for it, it will show up.
Yes, yeah, 100%. And it's so important. It's funny, I think Valentine's Day has always been a sticking point for so many people, especially for those that are not in a relationship or who have suffered the loss of a loved one, or they're just not in that love space.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think it's really important. I love seeing like Galentine's celebrations where women come together to celebrate each other,
Hmm.
and remind each other how special they are just with friends. And I think this time of year especially is so important for that. I was reading something about, I'm not big into really reading into the horoscopes and the daily uh, predictions of what you should do. But one of the things that I read earlier this week was that this is a time when we should really be connecting with our girlfriends virtually if we can't see them in person,
Yeah.
and just reminding each other what is so special that we love about them,
Yeah.
and really just again just projecting that care and love and connection. And I think when you are in a safe place, it allows you to feel like you can open yourself up a little bit more.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you
Well,
when you can share that.
I also think that during COVID, I have found that with my friends, with my parents, with my siblings, we are telling each other so much more often how much we love each other and how much we appreciate each other. Um, it is really interesting how that is really the ending to all of my conversations these
Yes.
days. It's such a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm
It,
not a big like love you, love you, love you. Like, I'm not that, like, I didn't grow up that way, and so it doesn't necessarily um, happen. But I really appreciate being able to hear it
mhm.
and to say it to other people. It makes me feel so much better these days.
Yeah, it makes you feel good.
Yeah,
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 to know that, okay, there are people out there that really love and appreciate me, and vice versa. And yeah, we'll carry each other through.
yeah. It's funny, as I was preparing for this morning and I was thinking about what we were going to talk about, as I was getting dressed, I decided that I was going to put on like really comfortable clothing, which has kind of become the norm during COVID. But even still, like, I love this purple shirt that I have on. It's nice and soft and it's cozy. And then I put on like my favorite socks. And I think that those are all parts, ways in which we can take care of ourselves, like by living in comfortable clothes that make it easy to move around and that we feel good in.
Mhm.
And, the way that we take care of ourselves do not have to be these lavish spa days.
Absolutely.
It
Well,
could be,
even to the point, I made myself a little cup of warm peppermint tea for our
uh-huh.
podcast in my favorite little Aquarius mug
Oh, I
for
love
my
it.
birthday month. I was like, yeah, because it made me happy, like to take it down and to pour my tea into it. So, like you said, just little tiny things. What can we do to unlock those feelings of happiness, contentment, that that safe space? Uh, and I really think what we wear, how we're showing up, uh, giving ourselves permission to take a nap.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you,
A big
especially
deal.
now. We
Yes,
need it. We need it.
yes, 100%. And it's so interesting because, and I will share this with you and the listeners. So, since the beginning of the year, I kind of went into 2021 saying, oh, this is going to be the year. I'm turning 50 in February. I have a lot of goals and things I want to accomplish. And I felt like I was hit with the trifecta of the pandemic, of the my whole psoriasis flare, and then on top of that, I was having major issues continuing with my sleep. Like
Mm,
everything has just been upside down. I
mm,
realized that I've been wide awake until 2 or 3 in the morning. I just cannot fall asleep. So I'm sleeping like maybe 4, maybe 5 hours
yeah,
tops. And even during that sleep, I'm tossing and turning. It's not a
yeah,
solid sleep.
yeah,
So I'll get up in the morning, make sure my kids are plugged in for school, and then either I will crawl back into bed for a few hours
yeah,
or I will struggle head bobbing through the day and then finally give in to say, you know what, I need to go lie down and take a nap. Like my body is just exhausted.
yeah,
Well, I did some research about it because I was like, what in the world is going on with me? And I realized that so many women in perimenopause are experiencing what I'm going through and that it's 100% normal. And I was like, oh, thank God, because I really thought I was losing it. I was like,
yeah,
this is so not like me. Like, I don't understand what's going on.
yeah,
And they said it's because of the changes with hormones. My adrenals are all out of whack. It really is part of it. And so I really had to give myself permission and remove the guilt about my sleep schedule and say, you know what, I'm just going through a time right now and I need to listen to my body
yeah,
and I need to give myself some self care. And I also need to tell my family this is what's going on. Like, this is not just me being lazy or me
yeah,
just
yeah,
crawling back into bed because I have nothing going on. This
yeah,
is my body going through a pretty major transition.
yeah,
But again, like really looking at it, stepping back and saying, wow, like, okay, my body is moving into the next phase, into the next transition, and it's okay. And again, just not criticize myself for not getting all the things done on my
yeah.
to-do
What
list.
would you say to your best friend? You'd say, hey, lady, take a nap. It's all
Right,
right.
right. And it's
I,
funny, somebody posted on social media, why is it that when people sleep in the morning, it's labeled as lazy. But when people go to bed early at 8 p.m., it's not.
right.
It's like, oh, that's a really interesting perspective,
Yeah,
right? I could still be productive at 1 in the morning. I
yeah,
was doing that last night. I was sending emails and doing things at 1 in the morning. I was wide awake, sitting with my laptop,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like I have
That's how
to,
you operate.
right, right. At least right now.
Yeah, yeah,
Hopefully it's not for forever, but
yeah.
I know.
Yeah. Well, I feel like if anything, Valentine's Day is a day to be aware of how we take care of ourselves or how we don't take care of ourselves. And, even if for just that one day we're a little kinder to ourselves and the
Mhm.
things we need, and maybe taking some of those things and bringing it into our regular weeks. Because I think it really isn't, it's so important to take care of ourselves, especially as we get older.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then I think we can show up for our loved ones in a much better capacity,
Yeah.
if we're really focusing on us.
But what a lovely thing to be able to say to yourself often and not just on special days. Hey, you know what? Today I'm going to do something really nice for me. Even if it's as simple as making yourself your favorite tea in your mug, going for a walk, taking a nap. Um, why do all of those things have to be reserved for a special occasion?
Right. Right. Yeah, they don't always have to be extravagant gifts to yourself,
No. Yeah.
but every now and then it's okay to give yourself permission to do that too.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I pulled out this little pocket mirror
Nice.
that I have in my desk drawer. And before we started the call, I actually looked at myself and I gave myself some positive affirmations. And I thought, I'm going to leave this on my desk. So at some point during the day, if I need a little pick me up, I'll just pull this out. I'll look at myself and give myself a little love.
That's fantastic. Sandra, can you give our listeners a few examples of some of the affirmations that you shared with yourself?
Yes. So the first one was, I'm going to have an awesome day. And I know that's not really an affirmation, but I think it is like setting the tone. That's the first thing. The second thing I said was, boy, you're so cute. Then I looked at myself a little deeper and I said, you are very kind. And the last thing I said to myself is, I love you, which is not really easy for me to say. And it's not necessarily because I don't love myself, but it feels silly. And
Mm,
I think that's part of what makes the mirror work kind of tricky, is that like it can feel really silly.
mhm,
And if we can get past that and realize that like what's happening in the moment is that we're sort of giving ourselves a little hug.
mhm.
And but you know what? In the show notes, I'm going to put a link to affirmations that Louise Hay has created, so that will help folks start to use. If they can't come up with affirmations on their own, they'll have a list to work from.
Right. That would be fantastic. And it's interesting because when you look back to the SNL skit with Stuart Smalley, and we used to make fun of him sitting in front of the mirror saying, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people love me.
Yeah,
Because it did feel a little woo woo and a little over the top,
yeah,
but there's such truth to it
yeah,
with how important that is to do that.
yeah.
And even if it's just one thing, and I've heard so many people, they'll use lipstick or they'll use a erasable marker and they'll write a little affirmation for themselves on their mirror
Yeah,
in the bathroom so that
yeah.
they see it every day to get them thinking about that. So it'll kind of get into the habit of doing those affirmations.
Totally. That's such a good idea. I have a whole drawer full of those markers, and maybe I'll think about doing like weekly little messages, because we have a huge mirror in our bathroom, weekly messages that really help us get our day started.
I don't know if I shared this. I know I've shared it on my social media, but for years, my younger daughter used to every night before bed, she would take a post-it note and she would write down a little positive affirmation for me,
Oh,
usually one for
oh,
me and one for my husband.
yeah.
And she would put it on our bathroom mirrors and then she'd go to bed. And I
Oh,
would make it a habit of not looking at them,
yeah.
when I was brushing my teeth to go to
Yeah,
sleep. But
yeah,
I would look at it the next morning And sometimes it was just something from the heart saying, I love you and I hope you have a terrific day. Sometimes she would look up quotes from Harry Potter.
Oh God.
Sometimes she would look up positive affirmation quotes and post them. And it was out of the mouths of babes. And I thought to myself, wow, like the fact she did it religiously every single day for a good 2 years.
Wow.
And what a joy it was every morning to go in, and it was like finding a little treasure.
Totally. I bet
You
it
know,
filled you up.
it really filled my cup, and she would do
Yeah.
it 7 days a week and without fail. And it was just, and sometimes they were very similar, and
Yeah.
sometimes she would make them very personal, and it would
Yeah.
just bring a tear to your eye that this little nugget is like really trying to fill my cup and putting that out there. And I thought that's pretty awesome. And one of the things that I want to try to do this year, I'm going to do it the night before Valentine's Day, is cut out a few hearts, and on each of those I want to write something down, whether it's something positive that I see in my girls, or an accomplishment they've had recently. And I want to tape them to the outside of their
Oh,
door for
that's sweet.
Valentine's
Yeah.
Day, so that they see those affirmations when they wake up in
Yeah.
the morning, to be
Yeah.
able to, just remind them that they are special.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, plant those seeds. So
Hmm. Hmm.
what a great
Awesome.
conversation.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah. I
great
love all
catching
of
up with
these
you
ideas.
today. I know. Well, I
Yeah.
hope our listeners took away a few good thoughts and some practices that they can put into place. And
Hmm.
hopefully they can share some self-love for themselves, just like we're going to try to do for ourselves.
Indeed. I'm going to start today. I'm not going to wait until Valentine's Day.
No, do
I've
it.
got my mirror right here, Nicole.
Excellent. Excellent.
Oh
Well,
my
we
God.
hope you enjoyed this episode of the Messy Middle Road Trip podcast and feel inspired to show yourself some love. Remember, it's not selfish to love yourself. Take care of yourself and make your happiness a priority. It's necessary.
If you want to keep the conversation going, visit us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or at messymiddleroadtrip.com. If you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a rating and review and some love so we can reach more amazing middlers.
We're looking forward to our next road trip with you. Until then, thanks for riding shotgun. Bye, everyone.